Hello and welcome to a series of lectures on floriculture. In the first part of this lecture, I described what roses are, where from they came, how they are cultivated, how their production is maintained. Today we will talk about the practice of their cultivation, the maintenance of the roses, as well as the different developmental factors which govern the production of roses. See, ordinarily rose is a perennial plant which has been propagated essentially vegetatively. The sexual propagation, that is wherein we use seeds or sometimes even any other propagule as a propagation medium, has not been successful. Ordinarily, the main pattern of propagation of roses is by using the cuttings of a plant at the developmental phase, especially when within that branch we have the vegetative buds at a specific stage. Ordinarily, what essentially is done, that the branchlets or sometimes even mature branches of a rose plant are cut off, and these are at the basal portion obliquely cut, as you can see, and then at the same time either planted directly in an inclined manner or sometimes stored in the form of bundles, that is wherein 5 or 6, sometimes even more than that, branches are tied together in one bundle, and that bundle as a whole is kept in a soil portion, so that the basal part, that is the base of that particular cutting, is fully covered by the soil. The soil is pressed hard so that there is no air space either between the branchlets or between the branchlets and the soil, and it is irrigated so that the soil completely gets adhered to the cuttings of the plant. These cuttings, when they are planted either individually or in groups, are monitored till the sprouting of the vegetative buds that forms a part of these cuttings are analyzed. As soon as the buds have sprouted, it shows that the vegetative cutting has shown an adaptability pattern. At this stage, in case of the bundle plantation, what is done is that these bundles are opened up, as you can see again, and then they are thinly transplanted at a specific spacing and in rows, so that in each row the distance between two adjacent branches is roughly 5 to 6 inches, and distance between two rows is almost 9 to 12 inches. This is required primarily because so that one could monitor the developmental pattern as well as the irrigation pattern of these vegetative cuttings. It has been seen that if these cuttings are carried out in the month of either April or May, by the end of the growing season, that is either September or sometimes even October, these vegetative cuttings have actually attained the productive potential, that is wherein the roots have completely developed, with each now becoming an independent plantlet. If the plantlet development is complete, that is where the roots have developed and foliage has also developed in these can be then transplanted either into the major beds of the nursery, or sometimes if the size is larger, they can be transplanted directly into the rosary. However, there are two fundamental requirements. One, the season of transplantation should be suitable with the temperature as well as the soil irrigation. If the temperature is around 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, that means if it is either September or October or March and April, at that stage it has been seen that these vegetative cuttings along with their roots can be easily transplanted from the nursery bed into the main rose bed. Once the area has been identified, it is essential that the soil in which the vegetative propagule has to be planted is dug up to a depth of an average 12 to about 16 inches deep, so that the soil is completely analyzed in terms of what the composition is and what type of soil it is, and if and when necessary, usually NPK, urea as well as organic manure is added to the soil, so that the plant cuttings or the vegetatively propagated plants are to be planted into this have a suitable habitat. Once the soil has been prepared, the nutrients added, at each distance, that is the suitable distance between two plants, a pit is dug up or a hole is dug up, as you can see, which is as deep as 6, sometimes even more than that, up to a maximum of 18 inches. Into this depth hole, the individual seedlings along with its root portion is put in, so that the root completely gets submerged or covered in that particular pit, and the soil that has been dug out is added and compressed in the vicinity of the roots. Now here the concept is that there should be no air space between the rootlet as well as the soil that has been added around these roots. As you can see, one either tends to use mechanical instruments for adding the soil to the basal portions, or one has to see that one can manually, either with the help of his feet or with the help of his hands, actually dug up the soil or fill up the soil so that the roots completely get densely covered with the soil. At this stage, the irrigation is carried out so that the roots actually get completely adhered to the soil that has been added around it. Usually, at first stage, each of the individually transplanted plants is irrigated singly with the help of the water containers. Again, as you can see, what is done is that each plant that has been planted is irrigated so that the adjacent area remains partially dry. This is required primarily because one could actually walk in the bed in which these roses have been sown, so that the soil does not get depth in by his walking. At this stage, one has to monitor for a roughly estimated 1 week to 10 days whether the plant gets adapted to the habitat in which it has been transplanted, number one, and number two, whether the foliage as well as the above ground portions, that is branches and branchlets, are actually attaining their proper status. This can be confirmed by monitoring the pattern of the foliage. If the foliage or the leaves are drooping downwards, that shows the plant has not got fully established. But as soon as the foliage or the leaf becomes erect, it reveals that the plant has got adapted to the habitat. In some cases, ordinarily what one sees is that the whole foliage or the part of the foliage may dry up. This is primarily because it sometimes takes a lot of time, more than 20 days, for the rose plant to get adapted to the new habitat in which it has been transplanted. In this case, one of the fundamental requirements is that one should regularly monitor the basal foliage as well as terminal foliage of the plant that has been transplanted to see whether the foliage or the leaves show any drooping or looping. If the drooping of the foliage continues for more than 10 days, that means the plant or the rose plant that has been transplanted has not been able to adapt to the habitat in which it was transplanted. In most cases, it has been seen that such plants need to be replaced immediately so that the rosary as such does not get depleted in terms of number of plants. In case all the plants have got established, the first and foremost requirement after the establishment is to loosen up the soil around each of these roses. That is actually labeled as the nursery digging or the transplantation digging. Prior to the first irrigation after digging, the addition of nutrients, especially the urea and NPK, is considered fundamentally important. This is because the absorption of urea as well as NPK by the plant facilitates the foliage development or the development of leaves in the plant, which in turn facilitates the proper mechanism of photosynthesis so that the plant get adapted to the habitat in which they were transplanted. It has been seen that if after the first addition of NPK and urea, the foliage developmental pattern gets slightly facilitated or increased, the productive potential, that is the production of roses in this particular habitat, is much more dominant than in those where the first nutrient treatment does not facilitate the developmental pattern. After the first nutrient treatment, that is addition of urea and NPK, it has been seen that foliage developmental pattern also facilitates the development of branches, and initially planted single plant, that is wherein we had a one unit of having one main axis and a couple of lateral branches, within a span of 2 to 3 months produces larger number of laterals or lateral branches. and these branches in turn reproduce branchlets, which in turn can produce buds in the terminal portions. That means the establishment of a transplanted rose or transplanted rose plant in the main bed within a span of 3 to 6 months can become a productive plant. It has been seen that in case the plant remains weaker, that is where the main axis is not able to sustain the lateral branches or branchlets, it is essential to immediately chop off these branches or cut off these branches so that the main axis attains a slightly proper growth status. The stronger development will automatically result in the larger number of flower development as well as the sustenance of these flowers by each of these branches. Further, it has been seen that it is preferable to allow the first phase or the first season after transplantation in these roses to remain vegetative in nature. That means wherein one could actually manually chop off the body portions so that the flowers do not develop. This is primarily important because if the flower formation is stopped in the first phase or first year of transplantation, the main axis or the main stem as well as the branchlets that develop from it actually are becoming more productive in the next seasons that are coming. At the end of the first growing season, another important aspect is that prior to start of the winter in case of temperate areas and prior to start of the cooler conditions in case of tropical areas, it is essential to prune each of these transplanted plants to the basal level so that only the main axis with a couple of small shorter branches remain intact. This is essential because during winter these main plants or the lateral branches are not able to sustain whatever product is required by the plant for its survival. It has been seen that in temperate areas, especially areas like northern India, Kashmir, Himachal, Haryana and other adjacent areas, the cuttings of these rose plants is carried out to the basal level. As you can see, again only the basal portion of the plant is visible wherein all the lateral branches have been cut off. This is important because high velocity winds or high rainfall or snowfall actually is proving negative in these conditions wherein these lateral branches or weaker branches cannot sustain either the winds or rains or even snow. Then once these has been carried out, these areas, that is the rose beds, are to be dug out to a depth of roughly 6 to 7 inches, and during winter there is important requirement of addition of organic fertilizers, especially cow dung manure along with grasses. This is important because these transplanted populations essentially require a much suitable soil for actually getting adapted to these transplant conditions. Now, it has been seen that at the end of the first season of growth, each of these rose plants or plantlets that have been transplanted will show emergence of leaves or emergence of even vegetative buds, usually in the month of January itself or sometimes in the month of February. It has been seen that at that stage, one of the primary requirements is to see whether the drainage of excessive content of water, either in the form of rainfall or in the form of snowfall or in the form of the artificial irrigation, is continuously getting drained off from these beds. This is important because if these beds where the rose plants have been transplanted remain waterlogged for longer durations, that waterlogging condition is sometimes responsible for the degradation of not only one rose plant but sometimes even the whole rosary. In such cases, it has been essential to create an outlet from each of these beds so that whatever excessive water has been incorporated into these beds is constantly getting drained off from these areas. This is important primarily in those areas where excessive rainfall or snowfall falls, but in those areas where artificial irrigation sometimes gets disrupted and a sudden irrigation occurs, in those areas also such outlets are necessary. Further, as soon as the spring sets in, that means when the first winter has been passed off by these transplanted rose plants, it is essential to dig up the soil almost throughout these beds. This is important because during winter, excessive absorption of either nutrients or sometimes water or sometimes other negative factors can actually deplete the growth pattern of the plants. You can see they use the manual digging of these soils of a bed of rose, so that the soil gets loosened up and aeration of the basal portion, that is roots etc., gets facilitated by this digging, and this in turn facilitates or proceeds or prolongs the vegetative developmental phase. In the month of March, April and May, we find that the foliage growth pattern, branching pattern and bud formation is at peak in almost all the rose beds. At this stage, it is essential to monitor each of these beds regarding density as well as the chopping off of those branches which are not actually containing or producing buds at their top. It is important because if a branch is primarily growing vegetatively and a branch in the vicinity of it is growing having a larger number of buds at its top, their simultaneous growth actually proves harmful to those when buds are formed. As you can see, again, we try to cut off those branches which are without bud and try to proceed or prolong the growth of those which are containing buds. And once the bud formation starts as well as bud sprouting starts, from that stage onwards till the stage one tends to harvest these roses for either ornamental purposes or for the extraction of the perfumery products, one has to constantly monitor irrigation as well as digging of the soil around each of these rose plants. If the rose is primarily grown for an ornamental purpose, in that case, essential requirement is to carry out irrigation either at weekly or at 10-day intervals. Weekly irrigation is carried out in tropical areas and 10-day irrigation is carried out in only those areas where the conditions are slightly suitable, that is temperate for the cultivation of the roses. If irrigation is either in excess in case of temperate areas or lesser in case of tropical areas, that less irrigation or excessive irrigation also proves harmful to the productive potential of a rose as well as the survival pattern of the rose. That is, if the irrigation is lesser in case of tropical areas, survival pattern of the rose gets actually decreased from a minimum period of 7 days to a roughly estimated 2 to 3 days only. Whereas in case of temperate areas, from a period of 10 days it gets depleted or decreased to a period of only 5 to 6 days. However, in case irrigation is maintained regularly and properly, the same rose on same plant can survive from a minimum of 6 to a maximum of 15 days also without shutting down any of these petals of the flower. That means the irrigation essentially governs the developmental pattern of the flower as well as their survival pattern. Furthermore, it has been seen that if one wants to actually develop different types of roses, that is, wherein one branch produces rose of color A, second branch produces rose of color B, third branch produces rose of color C, that means 5 or 6 colors of the same flower appearing on the same plant. In that case, a method that is referred to as grafting or a method that is referred to as budding is carried out. In case of grafting, what is done is a branch from one type of a rose wherein the color of a flower is of A type, size is of A type, is grafted into the plant B wherein the color of flower and size of flower is of type B, wherein the branch is split vertically in the central part and the branch from another donator plant is put into that, and each is continuously monitored by these transplanters so that one sees whether the graft gets adapted to the plant in which it has been grafted. Essential requirement for this is that once a branch is vertically split open, we have to create a V-shaped wedge in this like these, and into that wedge we have to actually transplant a V-shaped branchlet of another plant. That means one has to immerse into a V-shaped wedge a V-shaped branchlet and then immediately cover it on sides by a protective cloth. It means that we can actually graft a branchlet of one plant of a color A into a branch of plant B with B colored flowers, so that in the next growing season, same plant or same rose plant can have one branch producing one color flowers and second branch producing second color flowers. However, here essential requirement is that one should actually first analyze whether the donor, that is where from the graft has been taken, and the acceptor where the graft is to be carried out are actually genetically and phenologically compatible. That means where they have genetic adaptability to each other. Second aspect, as I told you, is about transplantation of buds. That means where we carry out the bud from one plant into the main axis of the other plant. In this case, what is done is that a vegetative bud of one plant, that is referred to as a donor or a bud donor, is removed with the help of a knife, and then this bud is immediately transplanted into the branch by creating a T-shaped wedge on the surface of that. We can cut the branch vertically and create a T-shaped wedge, and into that T-shaped wedge the bud from the donor is planted, and then it is immediately covered, where only the opening of the bud is kept exposed with all other parts covered. It means that we are actually manually transplanting a vegetative bud of one plant, that is referred to as a donor, into the branch of another plant, that is referred to as an acceptor. And what we get ultimately is that in that rose, one branch can produce one type of rose and one color of rose, and the second branch can produce one type of rose and the one color of the rose. This has been seen again only acceptable when the adaptability as well as compatibility between these two, that is donor and acceptor, is genetically and phenologically similar. Such phenomenon has seen to actually improve not only the ornamental value of the plant, but also it has improved the commercial value of such roses. In almost every part of the commercial areas where roses are cultivated as ornamentals or as a source of the aroma, they try to actually cultivate or transplant different types of roses into one area, and where afterwards they try to actually manually try to carry out grafting as well as budding of one plant, so that each branch of it is able to actually develop into a variety wherein each branch produces different colors of roses. Another aspect that has been developed is wherein we tend to cultivate these roses in the form of creepers. In that case, essentially two important practices are carried out. One, wherein along the wall we try to actually grow many different creeping roses where the rose size is smaller, but the branches have a pattern of getting added to the wall. We try to grow them along the wall, and we find within a span of couple of months each branch gets added to the wall, as you can see, and at the apex of each branch we have production of the flowers. That means we can actually grow these roses as creepers of the walls, and ultimately wall as a whole gets covered by creeping roses. And we will find that the ornamental value of the wall, irrespective of the shape and size of it, gets improved by cultivation of these creeping ornamental roses along these. However, at present another different concept has been created or developed, wherein we try to grow these climbing roses along a specific structures. We call those as ornamental umbrellas. What is done is that sometimes either concrete oval structures are created erect, or sometimes the iron structures or iron erect rings are created. Main branch of the rose grows, and towards the top umbrella surface of that we find larger number of branches growing, and each branch in turn producing larger number of flowers. That means we can convert a creeping rose into an umbrella type of rose plant. Now this has been seen to be very important by actually converting a creeping rose into an umbrella rose. This concept has helped to actually commercially maintain the creepers for very different purposes. The creation of such varieties, that is wherein we grow it either in the beds or along the walls or in the form of umbrellas, has improved not only commercial production but also the ornamental value of these roses. On the basis of these, we find within a garden subsections of the rosary even created. One section for those wherein the roses are cultivated as such, second where they are cultivated as creeping rose, and third where they are grown as aromatic or sometimes as creeping umbrella like roses. In each case, the cultivation practices are to be monitored regularly throughout the growing season, and at a time when the rose needs to be harvested for commercial purposes or is to be actually removed because of the dispersal or the setting in of senescence, one has to adopt and regularize and maintain specific techniques and methods wherein cutters are used so that it does not in any way affect the growth pattern or the productive potential of the rose plants. This concept has actually created a rose section within almost any and every garden, wherein each rose plant as a single unit or a section as a rosary has having tremendous ornamental value. This in turn has actually culminated with creation of what is referred to as rose bank in almost any and every ornamental park of any state as well as any botanical or commercially productive garden. With these comments, I would conclude the second and final part of the cultivation practices, developmental pattern as well as the maintenance of different types of roses. I hope that in future this practice would be followed so that rose cultivation will become a source of commercial income. Thank you.